Welcome to the Human Conversation podcast with Jules White, the real dragon slayer, author and entrepreneur sales coach. Tune in weekly for human conversation about business and sales. Enjoy business expert interviews, educational episodes, and virtual cuppers with entrepreneur business owners. So grab yourself a cuppa and enjoy. Here is your host, Jules White.
So welcome everybody to the Human Conversation, and I have a beautiful guest with me today, all the way from Switzerland, and her name is Sarah Santacroce. She is the founder of the Gentle Marketing Revolution. Sarah, welcome to the Human Conversation.
Thanks so much for having me, Jules. It's a pleasure to be here, and I love how we're both looking so summery. It's like, woo, it's summer.
It's lovely. I tell you, in the UK right now, it is really, really hot. So I don't know what it's like in Switzerland.
It's hot here too, but I have a friend who's in Bristol, and she's like, it's 34 degrees today. So I'm like, wow.
Yeah, we seem to get this weather where, I mean, we love the sun here, as you know, because we also get a lot of rain and grey skies. And so we love the sun, but we seem to get this weather where it just gets so hot, it's almost overwhelming. And night times at the moment, you just can't get our houses cool, and we don't have aircon because we just don't need it, you know. So it's quite something at the moment, but we're not complaining, Sarah. We're not complaining.
Exactly. The rain will come back soon enough.
It will, that's for sure. So look, it's lovely to have you on the show, and I just want to make sure that we have the most amazing conversation today, and I know it's going to be, because we are so aligned with how we see the world of sales and marketing. So I'm coming at it from probably more of a sales point of view, and you're coming at it from the marketing side of things. But everything we say to each other, it almost makes me it feeds my soul, because I think, oh yes, that's what oh yes. And so we kind of speak the same language, which is really nice. So I do want to talk about that, but let's find out a bit about Sarah first, because I'd like to know sort of what you did when you left school. I like to start there. It's quite an interesting place. See what your journey was like. So what happened to you, Sarah, when you left school?
Yeah, it's so true. It's such an interesting place to start, because I have a son who's 16, I think a bit older than yours, right?
Just a bit, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's this time where, they just have no idea what to do, and they're like, well, you just got to start somewhere. And so, yeah, I started with basically moving first to Paris. I thought I need to get out of tiny Switzerland, and I always had this traveling bug. So I moved to Paris, like a lot of Swiss German girls do. They want to, improve their French at school that they learned from school. And so I moved to Paris and spent a year there. I was 18. And it was, obviously amazing year as an 18-year-old. And when I moved back, I decided to move to the French part of Switzerland. So really kind of breaking free from home. I was very independent early on. And so I really settled down, finished my schools in the French-speaking part. And I've lived there pretty much ever since, except for a break where we moved to California much later with my husband. But I was always kind of in this marketing field, but I never, felt like I never felt like it was my place, neither in university. I didn't go to university. I thought it was too confining. It was like too much system oriented, so that didn't fit with me. And then even in the corporate positions where I started out, I was like, there was always this ceiling that I was bumping against. I'm like, I don't feel like I can do what I think needs to be done. And there was all these, like all these politics and things that I just didn't enjoy. And so when my husband, a bit later, when we had our second kid, actually, he's like, oh, I got a job offer in California. Are you interested in moving there? I'm like, well, yeah, let's do it. So we packed our bags and moved to California. My second son was just 6 months old. So it was a great time, actually, also to just take a break and get settled over there. And that's also where I started my business. I'm like, okay, this is a good time to kind of think about, what now? Because I couldn't work. And I knew that I wanted to kind of take some time to get the kids settled and preschool and all of that. But I couldn't imagine myself just sitting at home for 4 years.
No,
that wasn't for me.
I was the same when I started my business, because Sam was 3 months old when I started my first business.
Yeah.
So, but I think it's really quite fascinating to hear somebody who is moving really to the other side of the world in so many respects. That's how I feel, going to California. It's a long way away. And you've got this tiny 6-month-old baby and another toddler. That's big, isn't it?
When I think about it now, it seems big. Back then, it was just like, oh, that's what we do. My husband is Canadian, and we met while I was traveling in Spain, and he was on his backpacking trip. And so we've always had kind of this openness to the world. So, his parents are originally from Sicily. That's where I get my beautiful last name from. But it means Holy Cross, by the way, Santacroce, Holy Cross. Wow. And so originally from Sicily, and they emigrated to Canada. So he was born and raised in Canada, and then we met in Spain, and we got married in Barcelona. So it always kind of had this openness to not just be confined to one country. And Switzerland is such a tiny country that you just kind of, need to go out there and explore the world a bit.
It's really interesting, because you and I have been slightly different in that way. And I kind of feel, not envy, feels like it's not the right word, but I guess, sort of envious that I didn't go and see more of the world. And I've still got time, and I know that. But, at 18 years old, you've gone to Paris, and I think a lot of people listening who haven't necessarily had that adventurous traveling lifestyle probably sit thinking, blimey, she went to Paris at 18, and then she was in California with her 2 small children. And it's interesting that was already your mindset to sort of travel and have that openness. So it doesn't feel so big to you potentially as it does to the listener.
Maybe, yeah. And I remember a coach telling me, you need to tell more of this story. I'm like, well, it's not that unusual, And she's like, no, it is actually quite unusual to, do that. So
yeah, it is, and it's inspiring, Sarah. And I think that's the thing. Sometimes what we do need is, if we are feeling a bit more confined and we haven't traveled so much, when I hear stories like yours, I think, Jules, you need to sort out some trips, and you need to see more of the world, because it wasn't ever an aspiration of mine, but I feel like now I probably will want to do more. But of course, with the pandemic, which we're in at the moment, so if you're listening in a few years' time, we're kind of just coming out, I want to say that very cautiously, of the other side of this big lockdown we've been in. We haven't been able to travel, So, but look, getting back to your story, you're in California, you've got 2 small children, and you started a business. So tell us about what you did. What business was it?
Yeah. So the initial idea I had, it was to support other business owners with their admin and kind of, a support business in a way, because that's kind of what I knew how to do back then. And so starting my own business, though, I was like, this was in the year 2006. And so it was like right at the beginning of, or in the middle of the social media buzz and Facebook and Twitter and all of that. So I realized quickly that I was really enjoying to learn how to use all these social media tools to create buzz around my own business. And so I thought, well, I learned how to do this for my own. Well, why not offer that to other business owners to kind of help them, rather than admin, help them with their social media strategy and implementation and all of that. So that's what I did. And then going back to Switzerland, because we did move back, it was kind of a predetermined job agreement where first it was 3 years and then it got extended. So we stayed a total of about 4 years, and then we moved back. And I was looking forward to moving back, even though we had a great time in California, but I did want to raise my kids in Europe. So that was very important for me. And so going back to Switzerland, though, I realized how different the countries are in terms of especially marketing and social media. So I came basically back to Ice Age over here in Switzerland, where people are like, they were using Facebook, but mainly for personal reasons. So the businesses were not all yet on Facebook and Twitter and all of that. So
what year was that, Sarah?
2010.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I started Truly Madly Baby in 2005, and actually, and it kind of ended in 2008, sadly. So they were my kind of 3 years of running that business. I never, ever remember engaging with any social media.
Yeah,
so it's really interesting because actually it was around, as you quite rightly say, but it wasn't something on your radar as a business. I was using Mumsnet and NetMums, which were these kind of, forums on websites. That was how I socialized through my business.
Yeah.
So it's really quite interesting, isn't it, how behind we perhaps were from perhaps the Americans,
Yeah, and I'm sure the UK was still more advanced than Switzerland. It was very traditional kind of, oh no, what is this online stuff, right? So I had to kind of pivot and change to more of a training orientation. So really actually showing them how it works and trying to convince them that this is a good thing.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of energy out of me, I remember the first years, because there was so much resistance. I then also decided to focus in only on LinkedIn, because that's where I saw the biggest interest for businesses. There, the B2B sector, business to business, they were like, okay, LinkedIn, we can understand. You don't have to share anything personal. It's just business oriented. So I decided back then to focus on LinkedIn. But still, there was a lot of resistance from business owners, kind of saying, well, what's this online stuff and all of that. Yeah. So, we've come a long way.
We have come a long way, yeah. So how did it develop? This is obviously sounds like it was quite hard work to sort of get people to change their mindsets really around social media. Did there come a point where you think it kind of went, oh, yeah, we get it now? Did you feel like there was like a sudden change?
I don't think it was a sudden change. It really kind of was over quite a few years that I saw, okay, now I'm having to defend myself less in these trainings, and there's actually more people who get it from the get-go. And but I would say, probably the real big change only happened about 3, maybe maximum 4 years ago.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a slow transition, and it's funny because I feel like the same again today. Now people are marketing agencies and all these marketing gurus in Switzerland are talking about digitalization, which we were talking about 6 years ago. It's like we've moved on. It's like too much automation. We want to go back to the human connections and the humanization, not digitalization.
Yeah,
but
now you're talking my language.
Is like digitalization. I'm like, wake up.
Yeah. Yeah, and now that's where we talk the same language, very much so, don't we? Which is lovely. So you've sort of been training and educating around LinkedIn. Where does the gentle marketing revolution kick in here, Sarah? Because this really is quite fascinating.
Yeah, so it happened probably around my 40th birthday. You have either a crisis or a revelation or some unraveling. And so that's what happened for me. And that was now for almost 5 years ago. And I realized, really, am I going to be doing this for the rest of my life? I've always been a person who, I'm curious. I always want to reinvent myself. And so I had been doing this quite a long time already, and I just felt like there's something more. There's something else that I'm not seeing yet. And it was back then that I read Simon Sinek's Start with the Why.
Yes.
So this whole kind of rethinking and thinking, well, what is my why? Why am I doing what I'm doing? I kind of got almost frustrated because like I didn't know what my why was. My why was starting a business because I had small kids and I needed a flexible, kind of job situation. And so that really started a journey to go inwards and really think, well, why am I doing what I'm doing? And am I actually happy doing what I'm doing? And I came to the realization that I wasn't that happy, that a lot of the things that I was doing, especially related to marketing, I was always doing them wearing some kind of mask, feeling like I had to do certain things the way that I was taught or the way that the mainstream was saying that this is how you do marketing. And then also working with clients that I didn't really have a blast. Like I was like, okay, I'm doing this for the money. That was my why, right? And so that's when I realized, well, actually, I think what my why is changing the way we do marketing, changing the way we think we have to do marketing, and really giving ourselves permission to do marketing differently and to enjoy it.
I love that. And the reason I love it is because I had a similar journey with sales, because I was selling for 30 years and a bit. And I'd been taught to sell. I'd been on various different sales courses with different sales processes you have to go through. And when I started this business 3 years ago, I decided I don't want to teach sales. I actually almost wiped sales out of the scenario of what I would do. I'd just coach people and I'd just do all the life stuff, because I'm good at that and I've been in all these different situations. But one of my old bosses said to me, Jules, you were fantastic at sales. Why are you ditching it, And it made me realize that I actually loved sales the way I did sales. And so then created this whole methodology, live it, love it, sell it, around sales, which is, I feel like that's exactly what you've done on this parallel of marketing as I did, which is why I think we have this lovely alignment.
Yeah, I think so too. And I kind of told you offline that I really think we should do some kind of series together, because when I looked at your book, I haven't read it yet, but I looked at your book, I'm like, oh my God, she basically has these 3 stages that are very similar to what I'm talking about in my upcoming book. So you call it Live It, Love It, Sell It. And for me, it's Rumble, Rise, Resonate. So if you think about it, Rumble is living it, like, really going deep into your story, finding out what you want. In marketing, we're always told the customer is king. I think that is so outdated and overrated, because we need to first find out what we want and what our values are, what our worldview is, all these important topics that, like you said, live it. We need to really live it. And loving it means kind of rising and putting yourself out there and enjoying actually to show up and enjoying to be heard and seen and all of that good stuff. And then finally, sell it for me is resonate, meaning working with the clients that you are resonating with, that you are naturally attracting because they just resonate with your message.
Yeah, I love that. And I actually do talk about the buyer being king, but I talk about it much later on, as opposed to it's the be all and end all right from the start, because I do make sure, as you've just said, you've got to be comfortable and love who you are first. Because otherwise, if you don't love what you do and who you are, how's anyone going to buy into that? So I absolutely believe you're right. And as I say in my book, that it has to start with you. The buyer being king for me is more about how our attitude to sales has had to change.
The customer service, that is still important. But I think it, like you said, I think people understood it wrong. They thought they had to basically come up with a product or service and then chase after this customer that is king and orient everything towards that king.
Yeah, and that was how we were taught to sell. but also given the, I guess we were empowered to feel like we were king, really, because the customer didn't know anything anyway.
Right.
So there was this whole thing, you know, around let's make the customer believe they're king, but really we are. And that was my upbringing through sales, which was quite arrogant, but also relevant. We didn't have the internet. Nobody could research anything, you know, so I could say we're the number one company, and my customer would go, oh, that's good. And of course, now you just can't do that anymore. It doesn't stand for anything. So it's really interesting, I think, how everything's evolved. And what's even more interesting is how people are now starting to realize that how perhaps you and I see the world of sales and marketing is what it's truly like, because you're starting to hear people's language change now. I notice, which is quite fascinating. So.
Yeah, I think it's so important that, you know, marketing and sales evolves, and the training around marketing and sales evolves, because the client evolves without asking, right? We have today a much more conscious client, and I think they're smarter than, you know, 10 years ago. They're wiser. They're more into doing something for the world. They're not just interested in the cheapest price. So many things have changed over just a decade. I mean, you know, time flies, and we're like, oh, we have to really readapt also the way we talk about marketing and sales, I think.
Yeah, very much so. So tell us about the gentle marketing revolution then. What is it? What does it look like? What do we expect to get from Sarah?
Yeah. So basically, when I started thinking about the gentle marketing, and first of all, the word gentle, to me, that was always a word that was very close to my heart, because I went through this journey of kind of giving so much that I felt like I was overgiving and underselling myself. And so I had this kind of breakdown where I thought, okay, I'm done with giving. I'm going to be tough now, and there's no more of my free time. I'm going to be a tough cookie. No more friendly neighbor Sarah, you know. And then that was just not working for me. I was like, oh, this is horrible. I felt miserable. And so that's when I realized, okay, wow, that's definitely not who I want to be. I want to go back to being gentle. And the mission really, I think when we go back to the why, my mission is really to show that you can be gentle and kind and have a thriving business. So it's not an either or, it's both. It really has to be both. Because I also see that, especially in the coaching world, I work with a lot of coaches, there's this tendency, as I did, to overgive, but then kind of barely, you know, get by, and not really focusing on the receiving. And so that's why my mission is to show it's both and gentle doesn't mean pushover. Oftentimes I get this kind of questioning, well, what is gentle? That's kind of like too nice, or, you know, nicey nice. I'm like, no. Gentle can be like very gentle, but also firm and almost fierce, right? So so gentle marketing, what I thought about is the 7 P's of marketing. So that's a concept that has always existed, and I thought, okay, why not start with that and kind of not reinvent the wheel if it's something that's already out there. However, it definitely needs an update, because there was just so many things that didn't work anymore. And instead of, like, when you look at the 7 P's of marketing, you usually see these 7 circles, and, you know, it's like they're separate things that all have to be part of successful marketing. And when looking at these 7 circles, I somehow had a vision of a mandala. And I thought, actually, what we need is not 7 separate things, 7 separate circles, but we need 7 things that all kind of make a whole. And so that's when I came up with this marketing mandala, so the gentle marketing mandala. And the 7 P's are now part of a whole in order to get to your center. And so the different P's are passion, personal power, people, product, pricing, promotion, and partnership.
Love it.
So those are the 7 P's that we all need to work on. And as you can see, the passion and personal power, that's the inner world, right? We start with ourselves first, and then we go into, now what? How do we integrate that into our service, into our partnerships, into our promotion, and all of that? So.
It's brilliant. It's perfect. To use a P, it's perfect, isn't it? But it makes sense. And I think often what blocks us and what helps us to completely shut down is when things are far too complicated. And when I was looking at sales methodologies, I was thinking, there's too much, it's too complicated. I can't see where I've got to go with this, and when you keep it simple and you connect it and it makes sense, it's so much easier, isn't it, for people to buy into and understand. So I love what you've done with that. So listen, when's this book coming, Sarah? Because you've mentioned a book, so I want to know, when's the book coming?
Yeah, the book, I decided that I'm almost finished with the first draft. I don't know when this podcast publishes, but we're now in June 2020. And I decided, you know what, with all this heavy energy in the world right now, Jules, it's not a good year to publish this book. This book needs to go out with, kind of a fresh energy, hopefully. And so I'm going to wait until 2021 and hopefully January, February, March, sometime around there.
Yeah.
But I first thought, well, maybe at the end of the year, but with the US elections and all those craziness in the world right now, I'm like, let's wait until next year.
It's definitely a crazy time, isn't it, at the moment? But I love that you have thought about that. Often we're quite spontaneous and we just think, I've written a book, okay, let's publish it. I think there's a big something to say about when you publish. Because it's like me, I'm writing my second book. I've just started to write my second book. I'm so excited about it, I can't even tell you. And I'm telling nobody what it's about because I want this air of mystery about it because it's quite different and I'm very excited. But the point is, it's I wanted to actually write it when I was ready to write it, but also when my audience was ready. So I had thoughts after Live It, Love It, Sell It, I'll write a book straight away. And somebody said to me, you need to build your audience for Live It, Love It, Sell It, because that's then your audience for your new book. And it makes complete sense, really, because they're there. The people who have read Live It, Love It, Sell It potentially will be interested in what the next book's going to be if they enjoyed it. But then this other element of what's going on externally, what's going on in the world. It's a really good point, because then come 2021 January, everything crossed, that we feel like that may well be the beginning of a better year.
I hope so. I really hope so.
And what a wonderful time to release a book in the subject matter that you've written. So what's the book going to be called?
I don't have the final title yet, but I'm thinking something with gentle marketing. So
yes,
definitely.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to make sure that all of your links go into the description of the podcast, which means that people can then connect with you, which means they're not going to miss out on when the book is actually published, because they'll keep following you, which is amazing. Last couple of questions. We talked about the gentle marketing revolution, and you've told us a bit more about kind of the methodology around it. If somebody wanted to work with you, Sarah, what could they expect? Is there a course or a program that you deliver? How does it work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually interesting, because before you just brought up timing, and in 2019, a lot of people were also telling me, you gotta write a book, and I was like, well, I was just not ready, and instead what I wanted to do is build a program around gentle marketing. And I really wanted to build it this time because I had built other things around LinkedIn without really, talking to my ideal clients, or without having them giving me feedback. So this time I really wanted to create a beta program where people were actually giving me feedback, and we were co-creating the program. So I started that in January 2019, and I liked the experience so much that I was like spent all of 2019 to run 3 beta programs for the gentle marketing program, because I really wanted to create something that was responding to a need and was resonating with my ideal client. So that's what I have available now. And there's an online version. I'll be running them also live 2 times per year. And people can go have a look if they're curious at thegentlemarketingrevolution.com. It's an online program, but there's 8 modules basically, and they have lifetime access. And so however long it takes you. Clients do tell me it's intense because, again, it's going into your inner stuff first, and that is always intense.
Yeah.
That people do really come out of the program and tell me that they feel like they found themselves, they feel whole again, they feel more confident, they feel like they know what they need to do next, and they know how to bring more of themselves into their marketing. So
brilliant. And you were going to say something else. I'm sorry, because I
was saying that I also work with clients one-on-one for those who are not so much into the online programs, and I still do some LinkedIn work, personal branding and all of that.
Fantastic. I've loved chatting to you. I mean, we've chatted a few times, so I can't just say this is our first time, but every time I always feel like we've got such a lovely synergy together. So that's so lovely. What's your parting thoughts for our listeners about anything you'd like to tell us about? Bearing in mind, we are just coming out of this pandemic right now, aren't we? We've had a lot of time to think, Sarah.
Yeah. For me, it feels like I went on a 3-month personal development retreat, and really, I think what comes out of this is going back to what's important to you, what's essential, really, and focusing on that and giving yourself permission to not deal with the crap anymore. If there's something that someone tells you should be doing, think about it hard and really analyze, well, really? Who says that I should be doing marketing this way? Why don't I give myself permission to do it my way? And spend some time to figure out what your way is.
Fabulous. It's such a strong message though, Sarah, and it's so important now. We all have that choice to do exactly what you've just said. So I really hope everybody does just stop for a minute and think, what do you really want to do? How do you want to go out into the world? What wonderful, wonderful stuff. Sarah, thank you for your time and joining us today from beautiful, warm Switzerland. And I know we're going to speak again, but for the listeners, I really hope you've enjoyed listening to lovely Sarah, and talking about gentle marketing, which is so aligned with everything I do and talk about with sales. So thank you, Sarah, for joining us.
Thank you, Jules. Until we speak again.
Absolutely, yeah. And listeners, please do like and subscribe on whatever platform you listen to this podcast on. And we are on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. And recently we are just being added to Pandora, which is another channel for podcasting. So please do keep following us and tune in next time to The Human Conversation. Ta-ta for now.
You've just been listening to the Human Conversation podcast with Jules White. To find out more about the other work that Jules does, please visit her website www.liveitloveitsellit.co.uk. And if you enjoyed the podcast, then please do leave a rating and review on the platform you use to enjoy her show. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.